All right, welcome to another episode of In the Seaweeds. I think we're calling this one episode 2.5 because we don't have an external guest. I have stolen the hosting from Graham today, and we are going to feature Graham Parker, the CEO and co founder of Ship Angel. Uh, I should introduce myself, I guess, huh?
Mhm.
I'm Dan Healy. I am the co-founder alongside Graham at Ship Angel, and we'll get into I think both of our backgrounds today. But this episode should be a lot of fun, Graham.
I'm super excited. Already, it's much nicer and much more comfortable sitting on this side and not being the one asking the questions.
Yeah, I was thinking about throwing a wrench in this. I was thinking about calling it Between Two Seaweeds and just make it completely focused on global politics.
Oh, that would have been so cool.
That's how we start our days anyway, right?
Very true.
All right, let's get into it. So, I don't know that you really get into your background a lot on the podcasts, right? It's very clear that you are an entrepreneur. This is not a new thing, this is not a new journey. But give us the rundown. Tell us your history, tell us your story.
Yeah, I guess I've kind of been like entrepreneurial pretty much all my life. When I was a teenager, I played a lot of soccer, and when Ireland got into the World Cup, they had this famous game against Romania where the goalkeeper Paki Bonner saved a penalty, and he wore these special ruche gloves, and I was fascinated by them because I was a goalkeeper, and I called Ruche, who were a German company, and I asked them for a pair, and they posted me a pair, and then I ended up asking for another pair, and then I sold a couple of hundred pairs, and this was 1990, so we still had the telephone at home where you had to do the numbers around, and I was telling them I was my dad because you needed to be 18 to buy them, um, and I ended up kind of becoming almost a distributor for them in Ireland, and then um, yeah, I just always felt quite kind of entrepreneurial, and then dropped out of college, started in the shipping world, was just fascinated by kind of like global trade, the concept of how small the world had become over the last like one or two generations. You could move things around so much faster, and it kind of encompassed everything interesting to me. It was commodities, it was currencies. You would start your day, growing up in Europe, you would start your day talking to folks in Asia, and you would finish your day speaking to folks here in New York or in California. And to me, that was really fascinating. And then I started my first kind of shipping business when I was 22. Did $1 million in sales the first year, and then doubled it every year, 2 to 4 to 8 to 16. That was a great journey. I spent a lot of time in China around then, which was, looking back on it, was incredible. I probably spent maybe 15 weeks a year in China from kind of '04 to around 2012, which was really the time when supply chains were moving much faster. Obviously, they were moving before 2004, but they started to move really on pace, and that gave me a real deep dive. And then, of course, the last journey was also great. I was very keen after being in the pure shipping world. Um, you know, some folks kind of made fun of me a little bit in the shipping world for being a bit of a nerd, and thinking the internet might have been a fad and stuff. So I really wanted to build a software supply chain company, and that ended up in containers, and that was an amazing journey.
Fascinating. So, I guess before we jump into containers, because I feel like that was a big moment for you. You learned a lot, you saw a lot. You all obviously, you bootstrapped that business, which I've done in the past. It's a very different mentality. It's challenging. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about what was it like in China? Like how if you had to compare the supply chain that some of our customers today have from the US to Asia versus what they were working on then, like what is the fundamental difference?
I think kind of looking back to that era, like 2004, again, like, there was a maturity in China at that time. But I think if you look at the quality of manufacturing now, um, at that time, you still had a lot of low value goods being produced in China, a level of apparel that has since kind of moved to Cambodia, Vietnam, Indian subcontinent, a lot of furniture. But I think if you look at it then compared to now, the biggest thing to me is that a lot of these supply chains now are so mature, and you don't buy in China anymore because it's the cheapest. People buy in China because they produce incredible products, and manufacturing is an art, and there are craftsmanship numbers in China that you just cannot. You would not get anywhere else in the world. I think Tim Cook from Apple said it well. If they looked at a particular piece for the iPhone and they said we want to get every person in China who's capable of doing this into a room, it would fill a stadium. Whereas everywhere else in the world, it would probably fill a room. So just this expertise in manufacturing, to see China in that era going from, kind of high volume, low value goods to still some of that, but much more high end, complex products for very complex supply chains. And I think that's kind of like our Ship Angel customers today, incredibly complex products and incredibly complex supply chains.
So let's talk about containers. So you evolved from the freight forwarder business, which got you into the world of supply chain on a global scale. And as you mentioned, you were a nerd. That was a good thing, right? I think a lot of us that are in software today or have been in software for the last 20 years, we were nerds in some way, shape, or form, or we wouldn't have gone it. Um, Containers was different. Containers was big. Talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, it was around the kind of 2014, 15 mark, so it was a decade ago when we started. And even now, in a decade is a long time. It's not a long time, but I think in supply chain software terms, it was quite different back then. You had a lot of people that knew that technology was going to make an impact on supply chain, just like it had done in other industries. But I think if I look back, the fact that we didn't go on the kind of venture journey was really a blessing. If you look back on a lot of the companies that did venture in that time frame, um, personally, I believe it was almost impossible to deploy that at scale because the pace that you needed to move at versus where the industry was moving just did not correlate. So with containers, we were kind of like, in a lot of ways, when we go to conferences, we would be the poor kids,
Yeah.
compared to the venture-backed companies. But we were obsessed about building products that made a difference for these companies, and we won a contract from Hutchinson Ports to build a first product, and then that kind of gave us some confidence to go out to the market and start to speak to the world's biggest freight forwarders and the world's biggest shipping lines. And a few months later, we were sitting in Copenhagen in a boardroom with Maersk, convincing them that we could build a customer facing platform for them that could go global, that would be live in 10 weeks. And they didn't know whether to kind of throw us out or whether to take us seriously. But we did that at scale globally, and then that gave other major carriers like Zim and O&E and big forwarders like Siva and Daxer and Toll and Pantos and all these the confidence to come on board. And we were very proud of the fact that every project we did went live on time. The customers were very happy. The products were incredibly innovative, and we were trying to do our bit to move the industry forward. I can't get away from the host piece though. I'd also love to kind of delve into your journey because it's also super interesting, and thinking about like when we're talking to customers, I have this very narrow focus, and I've come from across the pond, and I'm a visitor here. Versus your background, which has kind of touched so many industries and has touched so many pieces of the country. I'd love to ask you the same question.
Yeah, I mean your background is fascinating, right? Because especially because of the world that we live in today. But you're right. I've worked across a number of industries. I think my first real experience in entrepreneurship was at university. So when I was in school, I was at Ohio State or the Ohio State University, And I'll never forget watching somebody in their dorm room sit down at their computer. It was the early days of Facebook. They were doing their homework. Everybody had a laptop. And then it was time to order food. And when they went to order food, they got up and they placed a call from a phone that was attached to the wall in their dorm room. And that to me was mind boggling. And so we ended up partnering with a company that had created some basic technology to provide kind of online food ordering, and we started the first online food ordering service in Columbus, Ohio. Which
Wow.
was incredibly cool. It taught me a lot about humility. I mean, you can imagine what it's like to sell into to small business owners on Main Street in Columbus and tell them, "Hey, we're going to put a fax machine in your restaurant and send orders through, and then try and charge them." And it also taught me a lot about kind of dedication. I mean, the only time we could get their attention was when the students were gone. So I stopped leaving. So I was there during spring break. I was there during summer because that's the only time we could sell into our customers. So I really understood what it took to kind of dedicate my life to a business, and that's really all I've ever known. I was really lucky. I came back to the New York area and had the opportunity to work at a company called On Deck Capital, which was the early days of fintech, and
Wow.
specifically in New York. And there was just this wild energy. You could tell things were changing. It was 2009, 2010, and they were right between their Series A and B. And I was watching a company create something while scaling, and it really stuck out to me that this is where the action lies. This is what I want to do. And then a couple of friends of mine were building mobile applications, and it was 2010, and the iPhone was new, and we decided to focus on building mobile apps for retailers and for health and wellness companies because we could show a return, and that was an incredible experience. Myself, Bobak Amamian, Pat McGann, Eric Weber, Chris Myers. We went over to Dumbo, Brooklyn, and we were in a 1,000 square foot concrete room, and we were going up against the biggest ad groups in New York, and basically pitching retailers that
Wow.
that we could build a better product. And to make an amazing long story short, we ended up scaling that business up, building enterprise technology for everybody from Abercrombie and Fitch to SoulCycle to BlackRock and Edward Jones.
Wow.
And we had 135 people between Brooklyn, San Francisco, and Durham, North Carolina, when that business was sold in 19. And the lessons are many, but I'd say the primary thing that I took out of that experience is that when you're trying to bring true value to large enterprises, and our focus was specifically on the U.S., so we spent a lot of time kind of in the Midwest and on the coast selling into these businesses. You have to have empathy towards their current workflows. You have to
Yes.
understand kind of the world that they live in, not the world that you want them to live in. And you have to adopt their culture, and you have to adopt the elements of that organization in order to build a high quality product. And I think we're starting to see a lot of that
Same.
at this point in Ship Angel,
Yeah.
because these groups all have individual workflows, and it's not easy. I mean,
No.
the goal of the supply chain group, Kevin Callanan from Roku said it best, right? The ultimate goal of the supply chain group is to deliver your promise to your customer,
Yes.
and these people are working so hard to do that. And so when we embed ourselves in our customers' businesses, and configure the platform to work for them, like I see a lot of what I saw then.
Super interesting. And it is very, very complex. Um, but I think, bringing the containers journey to the ship angel journey, um, you know, w- I'm very proud of that journey. I'm very proud of the team. But I do think that, you know, we're a quarter of the way through this century, and software has transformed so many industries. And to me, it feels like it hasn't done what it promised to do in supply chain yet.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of reasons for that, mainly rooted in complexity and workflows and everything else, like you just mentioned. But it also feels like that AI is the moment for these promises to be delivered. And personally, that's kind of what gets me up every day, is the idea that software, AI driven software, will finally change global supply chains for the better, in the not too distant future, given just how fast AI is moving. And that is, incredibly exciting. And also for me, it feels like a long time coming. Just in terms of being in the industry, you know, we should all hold ourselves to the highest standard. And I think the digital supply chain has been moving fast. Maybe it should have been moving faster, but I think we're at this moment now where we're going to see AI finally transform supply chains. And to your point, it's like it doesn't matter what brand you are, a Fortune 100 brand, a digitized, great digital supply chain is a competitive advantage for you. And that's what kind of makes this juncture so exciting.
I feel like we sat down and started talking to each other because that's what we do every day. And we didn't
Same
like,
stuff.
what if, believe it or not, there's probably somebody who sees this who has no idea what Ship Angel is.
That's a good point.
What if we took one step back,
Yes.
give the elevator pitch?
Yeah. So, Ship Angel is an AI native ERP for the global supply chain, and we are solely focused on BCOs, shippers. Everything we do, every line of code we write, all of the brain cells that we burn every day are purely focused on that one group of people. And we've been building products over the last 2.5 years or so, with a goal of helping these companies to digitize their supply chain, and particularly take advantage of AI. And we started out with rate management very, very purposefully. It was the least digitized part of the supply chain. In my mind, I think when we did a survey with 100 shippers before we started, and we were lucky enough to get like a dozen Fortune 100 brands into that 100 cohort. And when I looked back over the interview questions, I was blown away because, like, take tender tools, it was close to 50-50, 50% on spreadsheet, 50% using software. When it came to how do you manage your shipping rates, like mid 90s were spreadsheets. And it was really amazing. And speaking to people in the industry, it is a scary part. You're dealing with actual numbers. What if you put in an extra zero or you miss a zero? You need to be really good at what you do. But it was a great opportunity to bring that forward, to use AI, and to deliver value. But also, it's kind of a core part of an operating system as well. You can't book an international shipment until you have a rate. If you don't pick the right one, you're already gone down the wrong path. So it's kind of like the brain, and then you kind of move into the heart and soul of it. So, yeah, that's not quite an elevator pitch, but a slightly longer one.
Elevator broke down.
It broke
Um,
down in.
uh, why we're supposed to ask, I think, on this podcast some deeper questions, right? It can't just
Yeah,
be surface level.
yeah,
Why is this a venture backable business? Why are we going the venture route this time versus the last one? I mean, my last business, Prolific, we bootstrapped it. Containers, you bootstrapped, great exit,
yeah,
amazing experience. Why is this a venture backable business? Not
yeah.
why are we raising venture?
Great question. To start dangerously and try speak for both of us a little bit, I think we're both at the stage of our careers where we want to build something great that actually makes an impact on this industry, and building an ERP for shippers is a huge undertaking. When you're a single product company, in an enterprise SaaS world, you can build faster and cheaper than ever. But when you're building an ERP, um, you're becoming not just a system of record, but a critical application for global companies. And I think to build out that infrastructure really well, you really do need capital to do it right. So I think, thinking about, yes, in an AI world, you can build software faster, but as we sit here today, I think we're maybe around a third of our code is written by AI. I could not see a path to that going much higher in the short term. So I think you still need great teams. You need to build very, very wide and very, very deep. And then, of course, from a distribution perspective, you need to scale throughout the company. So I think when you want to build a category defining company like we're on the mission to do here, um, venture is the tool.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think the only thing that I would add to that is the pace at which you need to build software today is fundamentally different. And I don't just mean like writing code, like
Yeah.
going from vision to production is so much faster. And we're unique because of your experience. I've been around you now for the last 4 years, and we should talk about kind of how we were introduced and all of
Yes.
that. But the ability to break into the market, to define yourself, and then to grow with your customers while expanding your customer base absolutely requires resources. It
Yes.
requires people because it's not automated. We're not selling to a very to a lower market who's just going to click and sign up. Not yet,
Mhm.
but it does require kind of like some hands-on expertise, some learning while building, and some reacting.
Yeah, definitely. I think of that in two ways, and I think of it in terms of middle ground. So, I very fortunate in terms of supply chain software that I get to speak to a lot of the actors in the space, big and small. And the thing I always come back to is, um, I find the middle where you want to be is the middle ground. In that, if you are a pure logistics person and you're getting into this space, when people ask me for advice, I always say one thing that you cannot do is fall into the trap of not respecting software. Software is not like building a house. You can't think I'm building a software company. I'm going to get a few people to build a house and then I'm going to sell the house. With software, you're improving it every minute of every day forever. So you have to respect that process. And I say that because I've seen a lot of people fall into that hole of thinking, oh, I just need to build something and then I can just concentrate on selling it. And on the opposite side, I would also say, from a pure software perspective, there's this kind of narrative in some places that think, oh, I am pure software person. I'm coming into the logistics world. These people are still using fax machines. I'm going to be a unicorn in 48 hours. And that's obviously not the case either. So the middle ground is kind of understanding both worlds. Respect how difficult it is to build truly great products and build truly great software, and how difficult it is to get that talent around the table to make that happen. On the same side, understanding and respecting all of the processes and logistics, and from a PO being placed to a product hitting a shelf, look how many steps are involved, and trying to understand all of the complexities that are in there. You could make the same analogy in terms of how you build software today. I also see folks today who say, you know what, I can just go to Lovable and I can build a Salesforce competitor before lunchtime tomorrow. And that is like, so far from the truth. The scale and breadth of what companies like a Salesforce have built over decades. Forget about the millions of lines of code for a minute. Just the complexity across products and languages and everything else is incredibly, incredibly complex. So you can't just, press a button and have your engineering done automatically. But at the same time, I think to your point, it's like you also can't sit there and say, we've got an engineering team and they've got to write every single line of code. The best engineers, and we're lucky to work with a huge bunch of gifted ones here at Chip Angel. They see this as a tool that makes them better, and they know exactly where to use Cursor and Cloud Code and Codex, and they know when to use it in the front end for Next.js versus a little bit less in Ruby, and bringing it into the test scripts and everything else. And that's what helps you to move faster. But again, I think it's like this idea of being in the middle ground. You don't want to be thinking, you know what, we can just code something with no engineering talent, but you can't be on the other side of it too, ignoring it. I think really where you want to be is in that middle ground again.
Completely. And we see a lot of that, right? Like by putting engineers in our customers' environment, understanding the systems, right, preparing for connectivity and optimizing some of the AI data paths. Like that's a different world than we lived in 3 4 years ago because we're looking at it through a different lens. But the fundamental belief that we need to have, somebody on site understanding our customers' business problems and solving that in real time with technology is something that is working and working incredibly well.
Absolutely, that's a great point, and I think, you know, 10 years ago, even, you know, when you would look at implementing software, it was a very kind of like project managed, derived, consultant centric process. And in some ways, it feels like, you know, the cloud, enterprise software have kind of gone this way, and implementing software has stayed on this kind of straight line. So, I think where, you know, we see a lot of success with our customers is exactly like you say. It's um, deploying technical people to be able to get things up and running really, really fast. There is no need for these massively drawn out implementations. Even, you know, in an important system, you can get it live modularly. You do not have to eat the elephant in one bite.
Mm-hmm. So, if you logged on to the Ship Angel website yesterday, 2 days ago, you would have seen a point solution. You
Yes.
would have seen a rate management system as the primary, and that was intentional. We've talked about that. We built the first module of the ERP in order to establish ourselves and provide value to our now large and growing customer base. Um, but when you log on today, it looks different and it feels different. We went through the process of bringing that vision to life. And you said one of the funniest things I've ever heard. Can you talk a little bit about our experience trying to bring what we were building to life in a different way from a brand perspective?
Yeah, I think, you know, again, if we went to market day one and we said to the world, "Hey, world, we're Ship Angel, we're an ERP, we want you to come in and just consume all of these products," it would have been very difficult to get customers to kind of uh, to to get comfortable with that in a fast time frame. So picking a difficult product piece like we did on rates, and you know, I'm really proud of what the team in Ship Angel has done. You know, we have reimagined what rate systems are. We've built world first AI that some of the world's biggest shipping brands are looking to license now. And we did it in a way, like you said, to prove to customers that we can deliver products within a month that scale globally, that add value. But, you know, as we've been scaling that product, we've been building out our ERP. And, um, you know, I often think of it as the Ship Angel book. This is the one of the most important chapters because, you know, if anybody does see this, you will see a very different Ship Angel website today, talking about us as an AI native ERP for global supply chains versus the point solution that we've been. But I think again, our customers have been on this journey. They've expanded into invoice audit. We've had great design partners on the booking platform. So you know, it's kind of, we've lived it obviously for the last year while we've been doing it, but also, you know, trying to tell that story. Um, you know, you only get to tell it once. You only get to go from being a point solution to being an ERP once, and it's a huge step for us. But everybody's very busy, and how do you get them to pay attention? And um, you know, again, speaking for both of us, I think we both share this innate belief that building great software products is centered in design. And every feature, every product we do, we're obsessive about every detail. Sometimes the customers don't even see the detail, but we will not put it out if it's not great. And, you know, that stood overall very, you know, very strongly in our favor, but it's also difficult at times when you're under pressure. But I think in terms of telling the story, shipangel.com, transforming it into something great that looks different. We wanted people to come to the website and say, whoa, this is different. I've never seen a website quite like this. There's a few things on the homepage that look very, very different. And when we were in the design process, your incredible network, getting access to some of the people that have designed some of the literally best websites in the world, including for Apple, came to us. And, I remember when I was 22 and designing, well, not designing my first website, but having a container ship on the homepage. And I've probably seen 1,000 homepages with container ships since. And I thought I had seen all of them. And we go into this session. I am Apple obsessed anyway, so anybody that's worked with Apple, I'm already like, and I'm so excited to see what this new website's going to look like. And I said to you in the elevator going up, obviously we're not going to see a container ship or I'm going to jump out the window or something to that effect. And within the first 4 seconds, the first thing I see is a container ship on the screen. And I had to kind of do a double take. But it was exactly what we wanted it to be. And we hope that people like it as much as we do.
Yeah, that was it is it's high impact, right? I mean, we spend so much time. We've got an incredible team that's constantly doing research, publishing content. We were very transparent about the content that we publish, be it our AI models, our thought process on the future of ERP and supply chain. You're constantly writing about your take on AI and how it transforms not just global supply chain, but I think technology, generally speaking. And when people come and they visit shipangel.com, our philosophy is not that they should just click to book a demo to fundamentally transform their supply chain. It's that they should learn
Yes.
and they should be a part of this journey, because it's not a one company runs the whole thing, right? Like we intend to be the AI native ERP for the global supply chain, but there's a lot of learning that's going to happen. There's a lot of people that are going to be a part of it, and we hope to kind of bring all of that together. And I hope
Yeah.
our website represents us well.
Yeah, I hope so. And there is, when sometimes when people think of ERPs, they can think of finance and they can think of invoices, because SAP really kind of drove that drive of ERPs in the 70s and 80s, and then introduced the TMS system in the 1990s. But a good friend said to me a few weeks ago, the freight industry thinks as TMS, and shippers think about ERPs. And the kind of the wisest minds in the software world say that the days of monolithic ERPs are over, and what you will see in the next few years, but accelerating rapidly going into the next decade, is companies having best in class AI native ERP modules. They will have one for finance. They will have hopefully ShipAngel for global supply chain. They'll have one for maybe manufacturing. But instead of having this monolithic suite, I spoke to a customer yesterday in Germany who is in year 7 of an ERP rollout. Like that is just where software is today, even just without the AI element. That's not quite right.
Meaning year 7 not rolled out.
Yes, year 7 and still not fully rolled out globally, which is crazy. So I think you're going to see that transform. And to your point, we have a research section on the new website where we're going to be incredibly passionate about thoughtful pieces, helping our customers on this journey, thinking about how these ERPs talk to each other. How do I get immediate value? How do I, mitigate multi-year rollouts?
Mm-hmm. Amazing. It's been such an incredible journey so far. We've got amazing people in our corner between our investors and our team, and most importantly, our customers. We should probably talk a little bit about how you and I connected.
Yes.
So we were both, I think, recovering entrepreneurs, and it was the end of like the hard part of COVID, right? The end of the
Yes.
lockdown world, and we both found ourselves in a group called Hampton, which is started by Sam Parr, and was initially a virtual I guess community of cohorts of founders that had found some success. And it was 8 people in each group. Is that about right?
8 people. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so.
And you and I ended up in the same cohort randomly.
Yeah.
You were still over in Europe,
Yes.
and we would basically get together every week and talk about like what was going well, what wasn't going well. And you were in the
Yeah.
early days of thinking about Ship Angel, right?
Yes. Yeah, I kind of thinking about this idea again of like, if you want to build a category defining company, where do you want to be? And I think being here in the US is so important. Like, if you just look at it from a few different angles, like, first of all, um, the US is maybe the only country in the world where the government actually publishes data on importers and exporters, and you can see that there's over 1 million companies imported or exported in 2024, and you can see exactly who they are. You can see the volume they ship, who they ship with. That's something that's not available in Europe, but also the number, like 1 million companies. And then, in Europe, it's probably 20 to 30x smaller. And I think kind of in kind of general terms, medium and large enterprises in the US have a great track record of buying software faster than Europeans. So, and then of course you have just this insane energy that's in New York, and you have the software ecosystem, you have the investor ecosystem, you have an incredible shipper network in particularly going into the greater New Jersey area. So kind of founding Ship Angel in New York and making it a US company was super important. And I think back then in the process of getting my O1 visa, and I thought, I need to somehow inject myself into the New York tech scene. And Sam Paris Hampton was at that time kind of like a closed group where you had to
Hmm.
apply and stuff. And it was super interesting, for us to meet up like that.
Yeah. So we have a team in Europe, and we've got some amazing customers in Europe, but New York is absolutely home. And as we continue to establish the business, we have a huge footprint across the middle of the country now with some amazing shippers, and we're spending a lot of time um, on site with these folks, learning, building, and kind of changing the industry together.
Yeah, it's been real fun. Like for me, again, being new to the country, I think the last score, I think you and I had been to like customers in like maybe 18 or 19 different states. I still haven't visited every state like you, so the goal is to keep going until I see every single one.
We'll get there. Um, Alaska could be tough.
That is a tough one. It's bound to be some natural product though that's shipping at scale out of there.
You'd think so.
I'm sure there is,
Yeah.
or somebody headquartered there for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
That will be a tough one.
All right. So I think before we kind of just chat a little bit about like ourselves and kind of go into who are we and what kind of company are we building from a human perspective, which is incredibly important to both of us. Let's just talk quickly about the next chapter at Ship Angel. Let's talk about what it looks like over the next 3 and maybe 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, no matter what you're doing right now, if you're working in software, um, the next 2 to 3 years are probably going to be the most impactful, maybe ever.
That's
The,
true.
the the pace of AI, when I talk to my friends that are working in software, I say, make sure that you're doing something that you're going to be proud of, that's going to make a difference, because this isn't, a part of your 20, 40-year career where you'd say, "Oh, I'm going to spend 2 years in a FANG company, or I'm going to do X or Y, and then eventually I'll do." This is where you want to do the best work of your life in this period, because it's going to be the most impactful. It's going to be a roller coaster. There's going to be the pace of AI. It's not going to, in my view anyway, it's not going to plateau at all. If anything, it's going to like accelerate. And in the not too distant future, like in that time frame of the next 2 to 3 years, I think we will have breakthroughs that if they don't hit all of the different definitions of AGI, they'll start to feel like AGI in the business world, where they'll be just such an advantage. So for us, it's super exciting because, again, kind of in this ERP world for shippers, the market is absolutely massive. If we take the kind of old name of TMS, McKinsey say that it's going from currently 15 to 17 billion to like 30 billion within a decade. So this is a market that's going to double. And if you kind of like plug AI into that upward curve, it's just incredible to see where it could go. I mean, personally, I think if you kind of like take the latter end of your time frame, the best companies will have complete control of their supply chain. It will be a competitive advantage for them in the early days. But I think we'll go at the end of that process, we will have supply chains that will just actually flow. Most of the time today, there are obviously geopolitical events. There'll always be events. There'll always be unfortunately bad things happening in the world, and we can't stop them, but we can certainly mitigate them. And instead of fighting fires, we can get to a stage where cargo flows and where AI can go in and plug the gaps, augment humans to help them have that streamlined supply chain, and then get to a stage where products just move faster. You can sell more. You can sell more products. Reordering it just happens automatically all of the time. So I think you're going to see rapid growth within the supply chain software ecosystem. Again, if you look at that 15 to 30 billion, like there's 15 billion of brand new customer spend coming in the next half a decade. So for Ship Angel and a lot of other companies, it's really interesting because I think I didn't want to say the C word, but I have to say the C word, COVID. Like COVID was the moment where, like, I used to have friends who would be like, oh, I work in finance and I work in this, that, and like it's so boring what you do and it's so trivial. And then they were all ringing me in COVID going, hey, I can't get my barbecue, I can't get my flat screen TV, I can't get my sofa. It was the moment that everyone realized that, damn, like actually it is important. And some of the Fortune 100 actually had this real aha moment. Um, it was the first time that supply chains hit the boardrooms in some ways
Mm-hmm.
of the biggest companies in the world. And I think they realized that um, it's not a dark cost center part of your business. If you do not have your products in the right place at the right time to sell, you hemorrhage top line revenue. So I think it was that moment where companies realized that I must digitize. And now I believe if you look at that upward curve that we've seen in the industry over the last number of years, I think it's about to kind of move upwards.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, I agree with you. I think what we've done is different in the sense that we live in a different world than I guess both of our last companies, right?
Yeah,
In our last companies, we'd always talk about MVP.
yeah,
That was the thing that we always talked about. But what we are doing now, because of the pace at which we can build, and because of, I think specifically the product we're building and the category that we're defining, building a modular ERP is fundamentally different from building a full monolithic ERP and saying use this. So there is a world where our customers will be using the Ship Angel rate system, maybe the Ship Angel invoice audit component, and another ERP for other elements of their business, right? And the fact that we can go on a journey with our champions and with the leaders inside of these organizations, specifically in the logistics and transportation and procurement departments at these businesses, is so fun and so fascinating and so interesting and so different that the future that I see for us is really about having an impact in a lot more companies than we would have an impact in if we were building this business 5 or 6 years ago, because there's so many different holes that we can plug with the suite of products that we're developing and delivering. And I just think that's so different from, I mean,
yeah,
containers, for instance, you had one shot.
yeah,
Shipped.Maersk was one shot.
yeah.
This is not
Definitely,
that.
definitely. That it's such an exciting time to be building software. Um, I said to a friend of mine yesterday, it's like iOS 26 came out and he had been talking about it, and I said, it's like iOS 26 is like a new iOS is an annual event, and people look forward to it, and it gets incremental updates during the year. And I said, what the world we live in is like iOS 26
Hmm.
every week, 52 weeks of the year.
Hmm.
You get this thing and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm going to spend the next 10 weeks doing X, Y. And then the next week, something else happens. You're like, whoa,
Hmm.
it is just the pace is absolutely wild, but also very exciting.
Yep. Let's do a little bit of a get to know you. Um,
Awesome.
so, couple questions. Maybe this just stays internal. I don't know. Um, let's go through some stuff. So, tell us where you're from. I get it. You're from Ireland. We know that. Where are you
Yeah.
from, and how did it kind of set you up for who you are today?
I was born in Cork in Ireland in the south, and I spent kind of zero to 20 there before I moved out of Cork, and it's the second city of Ireland, so it is a major city, but um, compared to Dublin, it is much smaller, and it did shape me in lots of ways. I grew up around some awe-inspiring and incredibly powerful women. I was incredibly close to both my grandmothers. My grandmother on my dad's side um, had a big entrepreneurial element to their family. They had been building businesses in the 1800s and 1900s, and she taught me from an early age about what it was like growing up in the Second World War and how difficult it was. They didn't always have food, and how lucky I was, and instilled this thing in me that if you do not take advantage of the time that you live in, she used to always say there's like been 10,000 generations of humans and 9,998 worried about food and accommodation, and now you have no war, no worry about food. If you do not do something great, I'll be very disappointed. And that was probably the thing that stuck with me, that really drove me. And then my godmother was also an unbelievable business person, became a millionaire in the 1970s, built three businesses in three completely different areas, was a best selling author, just unbelievable. And then my mom is an absolute force in nature as well. So kind of growing up around those folks was great.
Amazing. Ireland, by the way, Ireland. So the amount of people that we run into in supply chain that come from Ireland is mind-boggling.
It is actually quite unbelievable for a small island with like single digit millions of people compared to the 6 billion in the world.
I know.
It has an unusual group. But for me, coming from one small spot in Ireland, it focused in on that, it pales in comparison to if I ask you the same question and talk about your where you were born and where you grew up and how much ground you covered in the US.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had the American upbringing. I was born out in San Francisco, right? My parents were out there in the late '70s, early '80s, and my mother would go back tomorrow if she could. And we obviously have a soft spot in our heart for San Francisco, and then moved up to the Seattle area and was there as a kid, which was really cool. I mean, Seattle's like outdoors, Pacific Northwest, great people, beautiful mountains, hiking. Had a really fun kind of childhood out there. Looking back on it, like we don't, I would never let my kids go out and run around in the woods the way that I used to, but different times. And then moved over to Connecticut and high school in Connecticut, which was a great experience. Being close to both Boston and New York, I think is it's a real asset as a young person. Just getting exposure to large cities, getting exposure to a more global view. Uh, Definitely went a long way. And then, yeah, as I mentioned earlier, made my way out to Ohio for school, spent some time in Wisconsin, and then finally made my way back to the East Coast. So for me,
Wow.
it's been the ability. I can pretty much plug myself into any city and have done something there or know something about it or spent time with those people, and I have an appreciation for the subcultures in America, because people on the West Coast, Pacific Northwest, East Coast, middle of the country, South, everybody's got a different type of culture. And again, I do come from an empathetic place where I believe you have to respect the people and the lens they see through.
You've just covered half the country there.
I know I have never lived in the South. I have not lived in the South. Haven't done
Wow.
it yet. So, but I'm very happy here. Very cool. Well, look, I think we're kind of coming to the conclusion of episode 2.5.
Hmm.
Tough that I don't get a full episode as a host. I'm happy to take over.
Well, I was super proud when the crack marketing team at Ship Angel came to me and said we would like you to host In The Seaweeds. And I've learned a lot in the first few episodes. But then, going through some material the other day, I realized that host one's name was crossed out and host two's names were crossed out. So I was actually third choice. So that stings a little bit. Hopefully I get better at the hosting thing.
Oh, I
Hmm.
think you're doing a fantastic job. This has been awesome. I mean, we sit in the office every single day, whether we're on a plane or actually in the physical office in New York or wherever we are, and we get to talk about this stuff. And being able to sit down and have a conversation in this capacity and to hopefully sit here with a platform for the world to hear the way that you and myself and Ship Angel are looking at the future of international transportation and the impact that we can have
Yeah.
as a company on a global industry is an amazing opportunity. So thank you for this.
No, thank you. And I think to close out from on a thought from my side is, someone asked me about Chip Angel the other day, and I said we are a relatively small group of utterly obsessed people, consumed by making supply chains better and making our customers' lives easier. And we have a stat about 96% I think of customers log into Ship Angel every other day. The top 10 have logged in every day this year, and knowing that we make a difference in people's workflows, even though it's not dramatic yet, it helps them. Probably every hour of every day in a way. That's really what drives us is the opportunity to actually help and make a difference and help make these great humans that we serve make their lives a bit easier and make an impact on these giant brands as they navigate the complexities of global supply chain.
Absolutely. And I know every single person on the team would agree.